Dr. Sergey Ivanov is a professor of management at the School of Business and Public Administration, University of the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., USA. His professional practice and scholarly interest are in the fields of scientific, organizational, and leadership research in government, corporate, multinational, and military organization. He received Ph.D. from the George Washington University School of Business, working under the leadership of Dr. Elliott Jaques on dynamic theories in management and organization. Professor Ivanov has taught management and organizational courses at the University of the District of Columbia, as well as the George Washington University, for over a decade and provided consultancy services to a wide variety of organizations, including the U.S. Department of Defense, Fortune 1000 Corporation, and other clients. Over the course of his work, Dr. Ivanov has published over 50 peer-reviewed journal articles on the topics of organizations, management, and leadership, 2 books on management and organization, and presented at over 15 national and international conferences, including invited keynote speeches and executive seminars. For Dr. Sergey Ivanov, the time is yours.
Good morning, Indonesia. Can you hear me?
Hello, Dr. Ivanov.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Is this?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay, share screen, please.
So how about, and is it coming through?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's see how long my talk is going to be. So the topic is, I really appreciate being at this conference. What type of future do we want? Some questions for the future of management. First, I wanted to thank all of the participants and organizers of the conference. Appreciate your university, and I would like to thank especially Dr. Liam Guy-Sin, president of the association. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a real pleasure and honor to be here and present. So here is the talk. So the very basic question that I actually have, and the whole talk started with a very simple question about maybe 50, 70 years ago, is how many management levels, 3, 5, more, should an organization have less levels? In many large organizations, people have no idea how many management levels there are. There may be 14, 15, 20, 23, 25, and say, and it goes on. Most people will answer, well, who really cares? If you work with students or more professionals will say, well, does it really matter? As many or as few as you want? Perhaps. Now, another question that sort of comes out of this question is, why is there a hierarchy to begin with? Why are most organizations worldwide on this planet organized in a hierarchical way? There is a president or chief executive or a person with a similar title, and everybody is organized underneath. And why does the organization exist in the first place? And what is its primary purpose? How large can it get? If you look at the world's largest organizations, it's from 2 to 3 people to hundreds and thousands to millions of people employed in this particular management structure in a hierarchy. Is a large now is this a large hierarchical structure run by just one person? Its CEO is the president. So just one person on top of this organization making all of the decisions for the entire company. Other scholars, if you look into the recent views, call as the nature of this organization is fundamentally totalitarian. Some of the notable ones are Chomsky and McLuhan. It's Now, if you sort of forget about the organization, move into sort of look at it from a different point of view. There was a recent article from astronauts who sort of live and visit the International Space Station. And one of those astronauts looking at the planet observed the following. The astronaut is Ron Garan. And sort of the facts. When I looked out of the window of the International Space Station, um, here are the following findings that sort of he saw. Um, he found that there's an unbelievable thinness of our planet's atmosphere. The paper-thin layer keeps every living organism, every living thing on our planet alive. Iridescent biosphere teeming with life. One of the observations that he found that he didn't see the economy, and he considers that we're living a lie, and that it's time for us to move our thinking from economy, society, planet towards the planet, society, and economy. There are also many no other things that we see on the surface. From the space, you don't see organizations, you don't really see countries, and you don't really see borders. You don't see money, you don't see many other things that we believe that sort of exist. Some controversial facts. If you look at organizations today and the impact on the planet, only world's largest organizations make a significant impact on the planet. Um, that's a little bit controversial, but nobody really cares about small companies. Smaller companies to become successful must grow large. Simple examples are, I picked just a couple of companies, but there are many more. Tesla, Amazon, Google, BYD in China. There are a lot of other companies. Now, sort of today, sort of there was an idea that's becoming exceedingly popular since about the 1980s, that we no longer live in sort of we're building what it's called a planetary civilization. That idea kind of came up and started developing in the 1960s, 1980s, and many scholars talk about it today. I was there, and probably we are. You're on one time zone in the morning, here it's a night, exactly 12 hours, the opposite. And one of those ideas is sort of thinkers is Elon Musk, who believes that the humanity has two options: extinction event or a multiplanetary exploration. So that he thinks that Elon Musk says that if you think about the future of humanity, it will essentially double in two directions, all of life as we know it. Either we will become multiplanetary, or life will be confined to one planet until some eventual extinction event. Now, what about this extension sort of event? First, we'll go to the planetary civilization. So it's not just Elon Musk who discusses that. Jeff Bezos, former CEO of Amazon, runs Blue Origin, discusses that humans need to populate space, and at least he sees trillions of people in space. Elon Musk hopes to send some kind of a starship, developing a starship to send to Mars. Michio Kaku, I'm not sure if he's famous in Indonesia. He's fairly famous scholar and scientist here in the United States. He talks about colonization of Mars and possibly developing propulsion systems to travel to stars. So the talk sort of uh, goes on. Now, if you look at the planet today, and at least where we are at, sort of those ideas sort of propagate the minds. How are we doing today in the world? And the world may have gotten mad, especially after the World War II, that the entire world was engaged in. If you look at this today, at the planet, at the if you look at the atomic scientists today, the evaluation is that we're very close to a final catastrophe towards midnight. Midnight meaning it's a massive nuclear war in which we The civilization as we know it today ceases to exist and we go back into the Stone Age. And so they consider it to be 90 seconds to midnight, which is the closest ever the civilization has been, at least on their scale. In the 1960s, during the Soviet and the US missile crisis, the planet was about 2 minutes to midnight. Now they sort of developed scale, and um, my hunch is about 60 minutes to midnight. If you look at the wars today on any continent, there is a war going on. So, if on a planetary scale, we aren't doing all that well. And so, some planetary needs. So, there is a need, and I think that's why, whether we like it or not, we're heading into the building of a planetary civilization. Most problems today most problems today, if you look at the planet, they're on a planetary scale. Environment, weaponry, energy, biotech, artificial intelligence, everything, any single issue is planetary, even the system of education. Some planetary needs is development of a multiplanetary civilization for survival. Sort of, Elon Musk says it's a backup for the planet. There is also a need to create very massive organizations. In order to create anything sort of moving into the future, um, even a national corporation is not sufficient to build to finish a particular project. There's a need for massive organizations in an organization employing millions and millions of people in it to achieve a significant progress in a particular endeavor. How to create it, how to ensure that make it productive. Should it be somewhat democratic or should it be totally totalitarian as it exists today? These are actually fairly big topics. And Elon Musk, an idea was sort of coming through about universal basic income, which was recently replaced actually again by Musk by with the development of AI and robots. The idea is that everybody is going to receive universally high income. Now, if you look at the organization, and now if you, how do you build a massive organization, and what is its structure? If you look at the world today, most organizations today in the world, most of them have lots of different levels, and they're really not performing. So people go in there and they spend their entire lives really not achieving much. The discovery that was made about 50 years ago was of called universal organizational structure. And there's a lot of science into that. I'll skip it. But if you look at any organization of any size, it should not have more than 7 management levels. And each management level is responsible for a particular role within a particular sort of work within an organization. Starting with the highest level is level 8, with a long strategic vision and generations forward, and ending with a frontline organization, which is the basic what people do daily in their roles. So if you look at the very large organizations which I've studied, uh, so how does a very large multinational organization, massive organization that employs hundreds and thousands of people, how does it operate? And so the majority of people occupy the roles at the bottom, so the levels 1, 2, possibly 3. Now, what's the role of the CEO? So 3 to 4 generations of forward developing new products and services. And so here is the size of those organizations. So if you look at the organizational size, if it operates of over $100 billion, it's largely very massive organizations. Small organizations, a little bit less revenue, 10 to $100 billion, and so on. And so that was a universal organizational structure. And what it says is that if it's a keynote, and it's hard to put entire theory into sort of a 5 minute talk. Fundamentally, even if the organization has 20 levels of management, fundamentally it has only 7, except that within each particular band, there are many levels of management who breathe down the neck of each other, and so the people are in a fundamental conflict. Um, Leadership now, what do people do sort of in the leadership roles? In large organizations, it's work on actual tasks that take 5 years or longer into the future, uh, which are fairly small tasks in and of itself. In the context of a very large, massive organization, it's work on tasks of 10 years or longer. For example, I'll give you an example of a task. A simple task would be developing a new electric vehicle, or for example, opening a plant in Indonesia to produce new electric vehicles. That's going to take 10 years or longer. Or building a spaceship, developing a new propulsion system. Now, so the leadership generally resides in a very large organization, in the highest levels of work, where people see the future many years from today and plan for that future, levels 6, 7, and 8 forward. Now, another issue within the organizations, and a topic that I've studied, um, called the leaderless organizations. And so what a leaderless organization does is nobody in most organizations, at least that I'm finding it, that type of them, that nobody sort of looks into what's going to happen in the future. Most people only focused on short term, including the leaders. What's going to happen in 2 years, in 3 years, within 1 year, but nobody is really looking into what's going to happen 20 or 25 years from today. And those levels are fundamentally absent. Um, in a 2023 paper, I found that most organizations are operating sort of by inertia, with the leadership level fundamentally missing and not doing that particular work. So some of the unanswered questions for the future that I think as scholars we need to get together and sort of understand how to answer them and actually frame more questions that need to be answered. And I don't have an answer to all of them. Maybe participants of the conference could come up with some of them. But is it possible to create a universal high income for everyone on the planet? Elimination of poverty. Is it possible to create a massive but democratic organization? Moving into the future, for countries to become sort of leading countries, and some of the leading countries are generally countries with very large populations: Indonesia, Brazil, United States, China, India. How do you create a massive research institutions long term focusing on the future? What would be the structures of those massive organizations?
Mr. Ivanov,
Yeah. Um, can we really? What would be the
Mr.
structure?
Ivanov, Dr.
Yes.
Ivanov,
Yes.
there are several questions from the audience. Is it
Oh, please.
okay if I read this
Yes.
now, or should I wait?
Please go ahead.
Okay. The first questions from the audience is what factors should a company consider when determining the appropriate number of management levels? For example, company size, industry type, organizational goals.
What a great question. What wonderful question. Thank you so much. Well, you take a look at the size of the organization and what it's really trying to do. So is it a small organization? Is it a sort of medium organization? Or is it a very large organization? So some of the easiest parameters, and I had to wrestle with that. The easiest one, what's the annual general approximate revenue of this organization? Are we discussing in the US and Canada and Europe, sort of I dealt with the euros or dollars, so I'll move it into dollars. Is it, let's say, $10 million, $100 million? So you're discussing an organization of $1 billion and above. So those size will enable you, how many people does it have employed? And sort of what you're trying to do. In So if it's a small organization on a local scale, it probably doesn't need to have 8 levels of management. It's probably 2 or 3 is enough. And if you're trying to grow a franchise, that may be 4. Now, if you're a research institution, for example, for the scholars, no scholar, no scientist can perform below level 5. So you gotta have a goal of about 10 to 15 years into the future. So those types of questions will help you determine the size of the company. Now, if you're discussing the size of national government, a successful national government or a successful large multinational organization, it generally will have to have 7 levels of management where every day-to-day tasks are operationalized at the bottom. And so the leader of the organization really, for example, the country size of Indonesia or any world power, you need to take a look at generations ahead. What type of decisions today I have to make so that the country or the nation or the company, what type of products we're going to have to develop generations forward.
Okay. The next question, is it okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. The second question is, how does the number of management levels impact communication, decision making, and overall operational efficiency within a company?
If it has the right number of levels, it works fairly well. Now, what you will find in most organizations today, fundamentally, by and large, most organizations don't have they're all structured improperly, and so organizations don't really communicate in different levels. All levels all work disjointly. Um, so, for example, if you go into the company today, you will find if you go in a large organization. So if you work in a very small organization, communication flows. So it's an owner, maybe a management level, and people underneath. So it's fairly easy to communicate. If you go in a company which employs thousands of people, then they tend to have too many management levels, and so it doesn't communicate very well. And so people are breathing down the neck, and it doesn't really work very well. So it's very important to establish the right management level, and for people to do the right level of work that they within their particular role.
And the third, what are the potential advantages and disadvantages of having a flatter or fewer levels versus a taller or more levels organizational structure?
It's a great question. I think you need to have the right number of levels. If you don't have enough, which most organizations have way too many, at least in our part of the world, organizations fundamentally don't work. Not in this slide, but I've taken a sort of, I don't know if you're familiar with, I'll give you that particular analogy. Are you familiar with an inventor from 100 years ago? His name was Nikola Tesla.
Yes.
So I think it's 1914 or 1912, Nikola Tesla was asked a question, how can we improve, what would be the greatest improvement we can achieve this particular year? And so his response was, we can improve the energy we obtain from coal. So when you obtain energy from coal, you only obtain 10%, 90% is being wasted. So if you look at a modern organization today, what would be a greatest improvement and how we can improve is having the right number of management levels. Anything that you do in organizations today, I would say over 90% of everything that we do is fundamentally a waste, and only 10% comes out. So having put the right number of management level, potentially can create the world's most performing organization by reducing the waste maybe to 80%.
Thank you, Dr. Ivanov, for the answers. While we wait, maybe we can wait another questions from the audience and you can continue the presentation.
It's a great question. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I've never had the questions before, so uh, really appreciate those questions. They've been in development for. So these are not sort of sporadic questions I just came up with. Sort of the idea behind those levels comes out of right after World War, when the whole world went crazy and people were killing each other. Right after World War, there was a CEO in England, Wilfred Brown trying to build a more democratic organization. And so those were the questions. And since then, continuous research endeavor has been happening worldwide, including in Indonesia, Australia, Europe, South America, North America, Eastern Europe. I was included, Africa. I was included in some of those, and so that was sort of discovered, and those levels have been sort of discovered worldwide. So I appreciate all of profound questions, but there's a lot of science sort of goes on behind those levels, and it's at least for me, it's hard to condense them into sort of 5 minutes. But yes, the answer is there is a right number of management levels for almost any organization. Um, so it's important to create the proper structure of the mass of this organization. I don't really it well we need to sort of at least my view is it's time to accept that we live in a planetary civilization. If all of the world problems are planetary, we can't resolve them country by country or university at university. And as this conference sort of shows, we are in a planetary world. People come from all over the world, irrespective of our location. Elon Musk, a multiplanetary civilization, developing technologies from Mars Plus, Mars and beyond. We need to unleash human capability in a very suppressed organizations of today. And if you look at organizations today, fundamentally most people are very suppressed. So if you look at the levels, I'll go since most people's capabilities are very high. So most of us can work at level 6, 7, 8, 9. But fundamentally, the roles which we occupy in most organizations, which is the result of that compression, are in levels 1 and 2. And if you talk to modern sort of normal adults, most of us are, well, most of the working adults are fundamentally bored and underemployed in those particular roles. So generally, people either have a second job, trade Bitcoin, focus on other things, focus on community, but fundamentally we're not really applying our capability. And it's a whole different topic of this organization. Um, and we need to protect our planet as that's the only home we have. And the topic is actually quite interesting, at least even with one, let's say right now there's a war going on in Ukraine, and even one nuclear explosion when Chernobyl blew up in the 1980s in the Soviet Union, the nuclear cloud apparently, I was still a very young child at the time, moved over United Kingdom, killing all of the ships and cows in UK, and then American soldiers who were then in Germany now are sort of died out of cancer. So even one nuclear explosion is going to sort of render our planet uninhabitable. Sort of another unanswered question that we have: if a Martian landed on Earth today, who would he or she talk to? We don't have
Sulit. Yang punyanya yang tempat itu dulu aja. Mungkin pakai ChatGPT ya, Mbak. Siap. Apa sama?
okay. And a major question, one of the other question is, how can we eliminate the doomsday clock from the discussion of the planet? How can we eliminate this concept from the planetary civilization? That we're no longer 6 to 90 seconds to midnight, but we're actually focusing on other areas. And what should be the question that sort of been raised? What should be the multiplanetary organization and the multiplanetary society of the future? What should be its proper structure? For example, if Elon Musk establishes long to not from many years from today a colony on Mars, he talked about direct democracy. But really, what should be the a more proper organization of the living or of us on this planet? With that, so some of the questions for the future, and hopefully this conference and other conference and scholars, we can get together and at least articulate the questions, if not finding the answers. Thank you so much, and really appreciate your time and appreciate all of your questions.
Okay, audience, maybe any other question from the audience? I think there is no other question, Dr. Ivanov.
No question. Well, is everybody's asleep
You can
or
continue.
that's
Oh,
that's
we can wait a while, maybe.
yeah, if there are no questions, we can
Okay. Bapak Ibu, apakah ada pertanyaan? Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. It is quite an interesting topic, sir, about your topic today. We can learn new things about planetary and multiplanetary in
it's really not my topic.
the
I
universe.
appreciate it.
We should
The
prepare
topic has
well.
started a long time ago with the scholars in the 60s discussed it in a planetary civilization. Isaac Asimov, very popular in 80s, talked about a one world government to create massive projects for us instead of spending trillions of dollars on weapons pointing at each other. In fact, maybe there's a project we can sort of unify. His idea was to create an energy project in space, beaming it down to Earth. But we need it's and if you look at it, sort of it's colleagues of mine. It's nice to create a better organization here, and it works better, and it's really nice. But um, if you cut the if you cut the jungle, rainforest in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in America, we won't have much to breathe. Or in Brazil, so any COVID, any infectious disease that happens in the United States will propagate over here. So there are no the food supply, everything is today is on a planetary scale, and I think the old notions of yesterday where the world was sort of very disjointed and we attempted, we can no longer sort of, we have to somehow unite and look at it as one entire planet. And there's very little differences in between us and between different countries. There's a university in Indonesia and university here in Washington, D.C. We publish in the same journals. We almost speak the same language. There's very little, there are very minuscule differences in between us. So sort of, and to divide us so significantly in the world, I think it's probably not the right way of going. So eventually, I'm hoping that I think the older generations have probably failed where we're going, but hopefully the younger generations will grow up and sort of see this world in a different light and come up with something better that hasn't sort of been sort of hasn't been created yet. With that, I don't have any more. There's a need sort of for a different future management system of the future.
It's quite maybe it's quite new for us in Indonesia because not many of us learn about the topic here. Maybe our fellow researchers from other programs, they learn also about the details in the organization. Okay, audience, is there any other questions maybe for Dr. Sergey Ivanov? Okay, if there is no other questions, then I think it is enough for Dr. Sergey Ivanov. Thank you very much for your presentation today.